The mirror at the flea market. I looked at the license plate in front of me, my face pale. Last night, after working late, I stepped out of the bathroom and saw a blood-red message on the mirror in the living room. Do not ride in a car with license plate X58. But I am an absolute materialist and do not believe in ghosts. Therefore, there is only one reasonable explanation. It's someone's prank. Using a special pen to write on it, after the oxidation process, it would turn into a blood-red message. Who would be so bored as to scare me in such a shallow way? Unfortunately, I graduated from Xiamen University, so I'm not afraid of these things. But now, in broad daylight, I had a chilling feeling. Because pranks are unpredictable. Xiaoyang, why aren't you getting in the car? After picking up the car, we still have to pick up the manager. Director Wang said he has an appointment with a client at 10:30. The driver urged. I felt uneasy. There was a voice telling me, do not get in that car. So I called the manager. Manager, I have diarrhea. Maybe you should go first, or I can take the high-speed train later. On the phone, the manager's voice was very displeased. If you can't make it, then forget it. I'll let Xiaozhang go. Xiaozhang, born in 2000, is very eloquent and flattering, making him well-liked in the company. He has taken away some of my orders, even making a fuss in front of the manager. The manager just patted my shoulder and told me to be tolerant. That made me very angry. In short, I have a grudge against Xiaozhang. The manager's arrangement clearly showed his dissatisfaction with my behavior. I've been pursuing this business for a long time and don't want to give it up. But I didn't want to get in that car. I gritted my teeth and said, then let Xiaozhang go instead. The car sped off. I went upstairs and looked in the mirror. It was a full-length mirror, as tall as a person, framed with wood. I sat there, feeling a bit regretful. The person playing the prank was probably someone familiar. That car belonged to the company. Even if I didn't go on the business trip today, I would go eventually, and I would certainly have a chance to ride in that car. I also thought that this prank couldn't have been pulled by Xiaozhang. The flea market wasn't far from Xiaozhang's house. I remember him telling me a relative of his had a stall there. Maybe he intentionally scared me so I wouldn't dare go on the business trip and he could seize the opportunity. It was a lucrative job. As I was regretting, I suddenly received a call from a colleague. Xiaoyang, I just heard that the company car had a collision with a truck on the road, the car was crushed flat, and everyone in it must be dead. I sat there feeling a chill. At the same time, I also felt a bit lucky. If I had gone on the business trip, the one crushed by the truck would have been me. In the evening, news of the manager's and Xiaozhang's death spread throughout the company. Colleagues sighed. Some who knew the truth privately told me I was really fortunate. No, it wasn't luck. It was this mirror that saved my life. Xiaozhang died in my place. At night, instead of sleeping, I sat on the sofa staring at the mirror. Under the midnight light, the mirror glimmered faintly. When the time on my phone turned to 00, no blood marks appeared on the mirror. Because of such a major incident in the company, we all got a few days off to stay at home. I stayed home every day looking at that mirror. After a few days, there were no more blood marks on the mirror. It was like an ordinary mirror. On the 5th day, I unexpectedly received a call from the police station asking me to come to the station. When I arrived at the police station, a young officer played a video for me. It was surveillance footage. At an intersection, a truck loaded with sand stopped at the traffic light. The car behind didn't slow down, instead accelerating slightly and crashing straight into the large truck. In an instant, the car was crushed. The license plate number was X58. This is not a simple car accident. After investigation, it was found that the braking system of the car involved in the accident had issues. My face turned pale. It wasn't a simple car accident. Could it be murder? Miss Yang, I heard from your colleagues that you were initially supposed to go on the business trip that day, but then you were replaced by another colleague? I nodded. That's right. That morning I had a stomachache, and I asked the manager to wait for me. The director said time was tight and arranged for another colleague to go. I didn't mention the mirror. The story about the mirror was so bizarre that no one would believe it, and if I did tell them, they would suspect that I was lying and hiding something. Miss Yang, I heard you also had conflicts with the deceased. I quickly explained. Zhang Shiwei and I did have some minor conflicts. We are both salespeople. He took 2 orders from me, but these were just minor conflicts between colleagues. I had no reason to kill him. Moreover, I don't know anything about cars. I don't even know how to tamper with car brakes. Miss Yang, don't get agitated. I'm just asking a few questions for the record. I mean no harm. The officer paused for a moment, then continued. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the person who had conflicts with you wasn't Zhang Siwei, but Huang Yong. Huang Yong? Huang Yong was the driver. I had heard from some colleagues that Huang Yong was a bit perverted, but because I seemed relatively safe, Huang Yong hadn't done anything too outrageous. We have a copy of your police report here. You reported to the police that Huang Yong had sexually harassed you, the officer continued. I was a bit confused. Huang Yong harassed me? That never happened. Is there some mistake? The young officer rummaged through the documents, found one, and placed it in front of me. Seeing the signature and handwriting, I immediately understood what was going on. It was a mix-up. There were 2 people with the same name in our company, both named Yang Ni. I joined the company earlier, and being older, to distinguish us, people called me Big Yang Ni, and the other was called Little Yang Ni. Little Yang Ni was very beautiful, and there were rumors that she had been sexually harassed by Huang Yong during a business trip. The incident caused quite a stir, and the police were called. However, Huang Yong was my boss's uncle, so after being released, he continued to work at the company. On the contrary, colleagues criticized Little Yang Ni, saying she was shameless and dressed provocatively to seduce men. Later, Little Yang Ni jumped into the river. I had to explain that I wasn't the one who called the police, but another colleague did. The young officer was also a bit stunned to learn there were 2 people named Yang Ni. After a few more questions, I was allowed to leave. When I got home, I still felt a bit uneasy. I thought about Little Yang Ni. She was very beautiful, becoming the center of attention wherever she appeared. Many male colleagues in the company liked her. I was also secretly jealous of her. After the incident, colleagues criticized her, and I couldn't help but say a few bad things about her. After Little Yang Ni's accident, I felt extremely regretful, feeling that I was one of those who contributed to her misfortune. I thought again about the mirror. Even if the car accident was caused by human actions, it didn't change the fact that the mirror's warning was unpredictable. Of course, there was also the possibility that the culprit left the writing on the mirror to warn me. But how could the murderer know I would buy this mirror? I suddenly remembered that a few days ago, I mentioned to a colleague that I wanted to go to the flea market to buy a full-length mirror. Could the murderer have intentionally prepared the mirror and then sold it at the flea market? Was the killer someone I knew? Thinking that the murderer could be someone I knew made me feel a bit anxious. My scalp tingled. Forget it, I'll wait for the police investigation results. By evening, drowsiness overcame me, and I fell asleep. When I woke up again, I turned on my phone. The screen flashed a faint, cold light, showing that it was exactly midnight. Out of habit formed over the past few days, my first reaction was to look at the mirror. As soon as I did, my pupils suddenly contracted. I saw several large, blood-red characters on the mirror. My boss was dressed in black. "Why are you still standing there? Get in the car." As he spoke, he opened the passenger door, motioning for me to get in. Normally, my boss was very gentle with me, but this time his attitude was particularly harsh. His hands felt like two cold iron bars pulling me. Nasty words came out of his mouth. "You bitch! Stop pretending! Get in the car!" I struggled and noticed his face looked grim, almost like someone else. Luckily, I mustered all my strength and finally broke free from his grasp. At that moment, a female colleague walked over and intentionally bumped into me. The boss immediately changed his expression to a gentle one. His terrifying demeanor just moments ago seemed like my hallucination. "Xiaoyang, the boss wants you to sit in his car. Why are you resisting?" This female colleague, Chen Xiaowei, was the company's finance director. People speculated that she had an unusual relationship with the boss. She often displayed hostility towards me. "If you don't want to sit, then I will." She then sat in the passenger seat and fastened her seatbelt skillfully. What the boss had just said truly frightened me. I made an excuse not to go to dinner and took a taxi home. Once home, I locked the door tightly, holding my phone. I felt anxious, sensing that something was about to happen. An hour later, a notification popped up on my phone. A car exploded on the XX bridge, flames soaring into the sky. Shortly after, I received another message from a colleague. "Xiaoyang, the boss's car exploded. Good thing you didn't get in his car." Chen Xiaowei liked to fight for the boss's car. She was looking for trouble. Reading the two messages that came one after another, I couldn't help but feel astonished. I looked at the mirror standing quietly in the corner of the living room, emitting a faint light. It had saved me for the second time. With accidents happening one after another in the company, even the boss wasn't spared. Naturally, I couldn't continue working there. Colleagues were all looking for their own way out. I stayed home, checking job websites and constantly sending out resumes. For the next few days, no blood red writing appeared on the mirror. Then I received a call from the police station asking me to come in for an interview and to provide more information. This time, the person meeting me wasn't the young officer from before, but an older officer. "Miss Yang, my name is Zhang. We meet again." He smiled gently. I looked at him but didn't recall ever meeting him. "A month ago, you called the police saying someone in your company was harassing you. I was the officer who took the call. Are you okay, Miss Yang?" There was concern in his voice. My face turned pale. The young officer had previously mistaken little Duong Ni for me because of our identical names. But why was the officer in front of me so certain about this confusion? Little Duong Ni and I looked nothing alike. She had long hair, a small face, big round eyes, and was very pretty. I, on the other hand, always wore long pants, had short hair, and colleagues said I looked like a man, strong enough to knock out any pervert with one punch. We were two very different people. I forced a smile. "You must have mistaken me for someone else. I never called the police. I wouldn't say I'm particularly skilled, but my memory is quite good," Officer Zhang said confidently. "At that time, your arm was injured. I took you to the hospital." I looked at my arm and indeed saw a scar there. I stared at the scar, feeling a bit dazed. I couldn't remember when I got this scar. After that, I felt a bit distracted. Even when he mentioned that my boss's car accident was also caused by human intervention, I remained very calm. I went home and turned on the lights. Looking at the mirror in the living room, I walked towards it. When I saw the reflection in the mirror, I was stunned. A cold shiver ran from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. The person in the mirror had a small figure, a small face, and big round eyes, though her hair had been cut short. But it wasn't me. It was the face of little Duong Ni. I pulled out all the mirrors in the house, but every reflection showed the face of little Duong Ni. I felt a bit distraught. Why had I become someone else? I didn't sleep the entire night. The next morning, I checked the mirror again. The person in the mirror had messy hair, red eyes, and dark circles, looking haggard. It was still the face of little Duong Ni. After a night, my emotions had calmed down. Since the situation was like this, going mad wouldn't help. The only way was to figure out what was happening. I thought that most of the strange occurrences around me were related to this bizarre mirror. Little Duong Ni had died, her body bloated and submerged in the river. Could it be that the secrets hidden in the mirror could change a person's appearance? It was actually simple to verify this. Just find the previous owner of the mirror. On the way to the flea market, I considered a possibility. Could the previous owner of this mirror be little Duong Ni? I had understood a truth since I was young. You must pay for what you get. This mirror had saved me twice. Perhaps what it wanted was my life. My body had become that of little Duong Ni. Would my soul be taken over too? Thinking of this possibility, cold sweat broke out on my back on a hot day. In a flash, I arrived at the flea market. I went to the shop where I bought the mirror. The shopkeeper was blind and didn't remember me buying the mirror. Fortunately, he still remembered the mirror. The mirror belonged to Xiaoyang, the shopkeeper said. Xiaoyang was a kind girl. She saw that I was blind and gave me everything she no longer used. Xiaoyang, I didn't need to look in the mirror to know that my face must have looked awful. Shopkeeper, what is Xiaoyang's full name? Yang. He thought for a moment before blurting out a name. Duong Ni. The cold sweat on my back intensified. It really was little Duong Ni's mirror. My suspicions were correct. The mirror was gradually making me look like its owner. Shopkeeper, do you know where Duong Ni lived? I found an earring in the mirror's crevice. It might have been dropped by Duong Ni. I want to return it to her. He shook his head, indicating he didn't know little Duong Ni's address either. Back home, looking at the mirror, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I wanted to smash that mirror. However, considering little Duong Ni's spirit might be lurking inside, I hesitated, unsure of what might happen if I broke it. I always felt like there were eyes staring at me from the mirror, like a predator watching its prey. I drew the curtains, wrapped the mirror, and put it in a corner. The feeling of being watched finally vanished. I messaged the HR department of my company, asking them to check Duong Ni's address. Not knowing what else to do, I decided to visit the house where little Duong Ni had lived before she died, hoping to find some clues. That evening, HR sent me her address. It was already dark outside, and despite my courage, I didn't dare venture out into the night. I wrapped myself in a blanket and went to sleep. When I woke up, it was exactly midnight. The silence around me was eerie. I glanced toward the living room, hesitation in my eyes. Was there blood on the mirror again? I knew the mirror wasn't something good, but a powerful curiosity gnawed at me. I decided to take a quick look. Just a peek. Finally, I got out of bed and walked to the living room. I went to the corner and opened the curtains covering the mirror. As I pulled away the last layer of fabric, my pupils trembled, and I instinctively threw the mirror away. There, written in blood-red letters on the mirror, was a message. Don't go! Don't go! Don't go! The spirit in the mirror was indeed little Duong Ni's. If I stayed, would I gradually be replaced, becoming someone else? This time, I wouldn't follow the mirror's instructions. I wiped the blood off the mirror, wrapped it back up, and put it in the corner. Early the next morning, I went to the address given by HR. Little Yang Ni's home was in an old residential area with dense buildings and poor lighting. From a distance, it looked gloomy. I reached the building and climbed to the 3rd floor. Initially, I thought it would be easy to enter Little Yang Ni's apartment. Since my face had become hers, I could just ask the building manager to let me in. However, the neighborhood was older than I had imagined, without any building manager. In the end, I had to find a locksmith to open the door. As I stepped into the room, an unusual scent hit me. It was overwhelmingly fragrant, almost suffocating. It didn't match Little Yang Ni's scent. She had a subtle fragrance, whereas this was overpowering. The apartment consisted of a bedroom and a living room, both damp due to poor lighting. I walked around the living room and opened the bedroom door. The bedroom was well maintained. My eyes quickly fell on a box in the corner. It was a wooden box, somewhat resembling a coffin. This box might hold the secret as to why Little Yang Ni's ghost appeared in the mirror. I guessed that Little Yang Ni's family knew some secret method to seal her spirit in the mirror. They then placed the mirror in the flea market, quietly waiting for a host. The host would transform into the likeness of Little Yang Ni, containing her soul. At that point, Little Yang Ni would come back to life, and I was the chosen host. So, what's in this box must be Little Yang Ni's corpse. If her body were cremated, would everything be resolved? I took a deep breath and opened the box. Inside was a corpse. However, when I saw the face of the corpse, my head spun and I was utterly confused. The body in the box, bloated and starting to decompose, had my face. I remembered everything. The one who died wasn't Little Yang Ni, it was me. I had a habit of jogging in the evening. 10 days ago, while running along the river, I saw a familiar woman in a white dress jump into the river. The area was far and uninhabited. Without thinking much, I jumped in to save her. I managed to save the woman, but I drowned from exhaustion. When I woke up, I had become a ghost. My spirit hid in the mirror at home. By some fate, that mirror was bought by Little Yang Ni. I died saving Little Yang Ni. She owes me her life. My ghost gradually invaded her body. This wasn't Little Yang Ni's house. It was mine. That mirror was also given to the blind owner at the flea market. That's why he treated me so ambiguously when I was in Little Yang Ni's body. I had come home. I took out the mirror I had stuffed in the corner. I removed the curtain covering it and wiped the dust off with a cloth. The wood used to make this mirror was from a Chinese scholar tree. The Chinese scholar tree can attract spirits. However, I still felt uneasy. I kept feeling like I had overlooked something. At night, I was awakened by the need to use the bathroom. As I entered the living room, I felt something was off. There was an extra pair of shoes at the door. They were men's sneakers. I lived alone. How could there be men's shoes in the house? So there was only one possibility. Someone had entered my house. I swallowed a gulp of saliva, looking around the living room, not missing any spot where someone could hide. My eyes stopped at the window. Something faint and bulging was there, like someone was standing behind it. It seemed like a pair of eyes were coldly staring at me through the thin curtain. I turned to run, but in the next moment, my entire body froze. A large hand suddenly grasped my waist. "Ni, it's me." The man's voice echoed behind her. I turned around to see a rather handsome young man with slightly long bangs covering half his eyes, giving him a somewhat gloomy look. "Ni?" His tone was intimate. Moreover, he walked in through the door, which meant he knew the apartment's passcode. Could this person be Little Yang Ni's boyfriend? I couldn't let him know that the soul inside this body had changed. I tried to smile to soften my stiff expression. "It's midnight. You scared me to death." I seized the opportunity to go to the restroom and check my phone thoroughly. I tried to find any clues related to this boyfriend. However, I found nothing. If he really was little Yang Ni's boyfriend, why was there no trace of him? Was he little Yang Ni's boyfriend? When I lay down on the bed, he naturally lay down too, hugging me from behind. My body was so stiff that I could hardly sleep all night until dawn. When I woke up the next day, the young man was nowhere to be seen. I breathed a sigh of relief. I couldn't stay here any longer. If he was indeed little Yang Ni's boyfriend, he would surely seek revenge once he realized I wasn't her. The only way was to change my residence first, and then think about what to do next. I just packed a few things, opened the door, and my face suddenly froze. The young man was standing at the door. The hallway was a bit dim, and his gaze was fixed on me. "Nini, where are you going?" He sounded like he was smiling, but that smile was strange and terrifying. My legs trembled slightly, and I tried to calm down. I'm going for an interview." His eyes seemed a bit gloomy. "Nini, stay with me today. It's our last day together. You can go for the interview tomorrow." His voice was gentle, but his eyes were delusional and gloomy. I was sure that if I said no, he could pull out a knife at any moment. I could hardly force a smile. Okay. Throughout the day, we ate and watched movies together like any normal couple. But in reality, my mind was extremely tense. I was afraid he would find out I wasn't little Yang Ni. Perhaps it was because I was so stressed and tired during the day. By evening, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, I saw my phone emitting a faint light. I picked up the phone and saw a new message on it. When I read the message's content, my drowsiness disappeared without a trace. "Miss Duong, I'm Officer Truong. Upon receiving this message, please remain calm because you are staying with a murderer. We will be at your apartment in half an hour, so you can hide somewhere in case he captures you as a hostage." I took a deep breath. This young man was not little Yang Ni's boyfriend at all. He was a murderer. I was in bed with a murderer. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine, making me shiver. I turned around to see the young man waking up, supporting his upper body. His eyes were fixed on my phone. "Don't mess with your phone at midnight, it's not good for your eyes," he said. After speaking, he lay down. I exhaled deeply, terrified. Luckily, he didn't see that message. I tried to control my breathing. Officer Truong sent this message 20 minutes ago. That meant they would arrive at the apartment in 10 minutes. I only had 10 minutes to escape. Otherwise, I would become a hostage and face danger. The problem now was the murderer's hand holding onto my waist. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I need to go to the bathroom." The hand around me let go. I stood up, took 2 steps. "Wait a minute." The young man suddenly spoke, my heart pounding wildly. What did he find out? Just as my heart was racing, the young man placed a pair of slippers in front of me. "Why aren't you wearing shoes? Be careful not to catch a cold." After he spoke, I slipped my feet into the slippers. He looked up at me. His gaze was complex, as if trying to etch my face into his mind. There was no time to think about this. I quickly stepped into the bathroom and closed the door tightly, my back pressed against the bathroom door. Watching the minutes tick by on the phone was particularly difficult. I feared the young man outside would notice something unusual and break down the door to barge in. Outside the window, the sound of police sirens rang out. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, there was a knock on the door. The knocking became more urgent with each passing moment. I pressed harder against the door. However, the person outside was frantic and incredibly strong. The door was smashed to pieces. The young man stepped in with a cold, menacing look, pressing me into a corner. "Nini, did you call the police?" Did you just pick up the phone and call the police? Why did you call the police? His voice was full of anger. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed my neck. The feeling of suffocation spread throughout my body. It was terrible. I blacked out. At that moment, I seemed to hear the sound of the apartment door being opened. When I woke up again, I found myself in the hospital, the room filled with the smell of antiseptic. It seems I hadn't died and had been rescued. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Immediately after being discharged, I met the police officer I had encountered at the police station not long ago, Officer Duong. I also learned about the process of investigating the case from Officer Duong. The prisoner's name was Trio Tua Phong. That day, when the police rushed in, the prisoner probably felt there was no escape route, so he turned and jumped out of the window, dying on the spot. Trio Tua Phong was not the serial killer targeting single women living alone as I had thought. He was the murderer who killed 5 people: Xiao Zhang, Huang Deng, the manager, the boss, and Tran Hu Vi. He worked in the automotive research and development field. With his extensive knowledge of vehicles, he intervened in those 2 cars. That's why those 2 accidents happened. In these 2 cases, Trio Tua Phong was the perpetrator. The evidence is conclusive. The only problem is that we couldn't find the motive for Trio Tua Phong's killing of these 5 people. Officer Duong looked at me sharply. Miss Duong, according to the testimony of your colleague, you were supposed to get in the car during both accidents, but you refused. If it happened once, it might be a coincidence, but twice is too much of a coincidence. Of course, it wasn't just a random coincidence. I silently gave myself a warning. My ghost was hiding in the mirror, slowly taking over the body of Duong Ni. As a ghost, I had some predictive abilities. Therefore, I silently communicated with myself through the mirror. But this was my secret. I couldn't let anyone know. I calmly said, "It truly is a coincidence. The first time was because I had a stomach ache. The second time was because the boss had a strange attitude towards me." Officer Duong clearly didn't believe that. "Miss Duong, we found Trio Tua Phong's broken cell phone and recovered the data inside. 2 deleted messages caught our attention. These 2 messages were sent by Trio Tua Phong to you, Duong. The second message, 'Stay away from men wearing black.' I was stunned. How could this be? These 2 messages were what the mirror showed me. How could Trio Tua Phong tell me? I felt like I had definitely forgotten something important. When I got home, I searched all over the house to find something, but even when exhausted, I still couldn't find anything. I angrily hit my head as if I were crazy, like a madman. When I woke up the next day, I found 2 things on the bedside table. One was a letter, the other was an old cell phone. I opened the phone and saw 2 messages from an unknown number. Don't ride in a car with license plate XXX58. Stay away from men wearing black, marked read. I knew this unfamiliar number belonged to Trio Tua Phong. I opened the letter. The handwriting on it was both familiar and strange. I thought about it a bit and decided to tell you the truth. In fact, you are me, and I am you. There's no ghost or anything. You are Duong Ni. A throbbing pain surged in my head. Finally, I remembered what I had forgotten. My name is Duong Ni. In the eyes of others, I am beautiful and have a gentle personality. In reality, I am introverted and modest. My parents passed away when I was in middle school. I was raised by my aunt, and from a young age, I understood things well. I never argued with my cousins. Even if treated poorly, I would silently endure it. 2 months ago, just after graduation, I joined a medical equipment company as a sales staff. Once I went to visit a client. Upon returning to the hotel while half asleep, I felt someone pressing on me. I woke up and realized it was the driver, Huang Deng, so I struggled vigorously. Finally, I managed to escape from Huang Dong's clutches. I called the police to accuse him of sexual harassment. However, he sent me a photo, a very compromising image of me. I ran away from the police station and dared not sue him. This was just the beginning of my nightmare. Not long after, news spread throughout the company. The boss and the manager also had those photos and used them to threaten me. They wouldn't let me leave the company, or else they would send the photos to my relatives and friends. Tran Hyo Vi was the boss's mistress, and Teo Truong had feelings for me, but I rejected him. These two hated me. They spread many false rumors about me. In desperation, I chose to forget it all by jumping into the river. Duong Ni saved me, and under this stimulation, I became mentally weakened. I created another persona for myself. One was Duong Ni, courageous and strong. Anyone who dared to bully her, she would bravely resist. I secretly observed her, envying her and wanting to be like her. Now that I have become Duong Ni, I have the courage to face the wolves and tigers in the company. Trio Thuafong was my junior high school classmate. On the day I jumped into the river, he was nearby. After hearing what happened to me, he said he would help me solve it. When I was in middle school, I was bullied by bad students, and Trio Thuafong did the same, coming back to beat those who bullied me. When Duong Ni sank into sleep, I timidly and cowardly stepped out. After receiving Trio Thuafong's message, I used a red pen to write a warning on the mirror. To protect me, Trio Thuafong tightened my neck when the police arrived, making me a perfect victim. He chose to leave for the other world and took all the secrets with him to the grave. Only I remained a coward, hiding under Trio Thuafong's protection. If I were braver, Duong Ni wouldn't have been lost, and neither would Trio Thuafong. I'm sorry. I held the letter, tears falling drop by drop. I couldn't be that cowardly anymore. I walked up to the mirror, looked at myself in it, and slowly stood up straight. Reflect the image of Duong Ni, calm and confident. The next day, I sought Officer Truong. I told him everything. After hearing this, Officer Truong let out a gentle sigh. Finally, he only said 2 sentences to me. You're still young. Live meaningfully. I will live well. Complete the legal procedures. I went to the hospital, met with the doctor, and took medication. I changed jobs and moved elsewhere, starting a new life. I went to meet Trio Thuafong. The young man in the photo on the tombstone matched the young man in my memory. One twilight afternoon, he and I walked home together. Don't be afraid, Nini. If anyone bullies you, tell me. I will always protect you. After that, my parents had an issue, so I moved to my aunt's house and changed schools. I never got to see him again. Suddenly, the young man in the photo seemed to be smiling at me. End.